A note to the listeners, the second story of episode 98 contains some very brief explicit language. Word nerd, wordsmith, wordy, wordless. Oxford Dictionary says a word is a single, distinct, meaningful element of speech or writing, used with others or sometimes alone. We say each one matters. No extra words is literature, minimalist style. And we're getting you right to the story. The Quizzical Lizard by Anna Kander. Once we get the iguana, we have to figure out what to do with him. We name him the Quizzical Lizard and call him Quiz for short. When you talk to Quiz, say reading from your 79th draft of Harry Potter fanfiction, which is definitely honing your craft, he cocks his head in a way that suggests interest. We can agree he's interested, yes? 79th drafts interest all fanfiction writers' pets. Iguanas are called the dogs of the lizard kingdom, probably by scientists who are lonely. Quiz grows to the size of a small house cat, but he's mostly tail and personality. His favorite food is McDonald's cheeseburger. He launches himself toward the crinkle of paper wrapper, the way other pets attune to can openers. He roams our home freely, enjoying sunbeams and well-placed heat lamps. When I oversleep, he scratches at my bedroom door. When I write, seated at the card table, he sits on my bare feet. One year we decide sitting under card tables might be boring. With his big brown eyes, Quiz says, "Take me outside." I'm a sucker for silent conversation, so I buy him a red leash designed for ferrets. We walk just far enough to discover that I have maternal instincts. My gosh, there are too many creatures that swoop and chomp. Now Quiz makes an annual climb of the Christmas tree. You haven't lived till you've untangled tinsel from claws. Happy New Year! Welcome to No Extra Words, One Person Search for Story, Season 1, Flash Fiction. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I'm your producer and editor. Long-time listeners will note a slight change in our title of the show. We've been No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction podcast, since we launched in May of 2015, but everything changes, especially when calendars flip. And we're gearing up for some changes around here. February 2nd, we'll launch Season 2, where we will do something completely different. In the meantime, we are here with one of our regular Flash Fiction episodes, just like we've been doing for the last 2.5 years. In fact, it is one of our last, and I'm excited to bring it to you. I don't want to go too much into all of what 2018 is going to bring on the show here, because I've got great stories to talk about. I just wanted to plant that little teaser in your head. So you are getting this, if you download it right away, on the 12th day of Christmas, which is something I've been told by my husband no one celebrates but me, because the 3-year-old keeps asking me, "Is Christmas over, Mama?" And I told him, no, not till Friday. My husband says it's confusing because everybody else stopped celebrating Christmas last week, but I like old school 12 days of Christmas season. It's part of a religious tradition for me, but I mostly like it as a barrier between the holidays and January. January feels really harsh. Every commercial is for a diet of some kind. Everyone is running. Everyone is at the gym. Hopefully you're listening to this at the gym. Wouldn't that be awesome? But January just feels like a plunge into cold water, and I never quite feel ready for it. It feels like that week between Christmas and New Year is quiet and festive and peaceful, and there's lots of good leftover food. And then you wake up late on January 1 after having been awake all night, and everything is expected to just go back to normal, except a better version of yourself. And it's not something that has ever sat with me well. So I wanted to sneak a little bit of holidays into your first story here, as my Christmas tree is not quite down yet, and we're just working slowly on getting back into that mode. So the image of the iguana climbing the Christmas tree was a wonderful way to launch you into 2018 with the Quizzical Lizard. Not the easiest title to say, but such a delightful little story. Our episode's on the short side today. We're doing 2 stories, and both of them are about the ways we communicate without talking. I love the description of this iguana who nurtures this writer through her life of writing fan fiction, and you feel her longing for something more, and she's honing her craft with this fan fiction, but she wants something more, and she loves this lizard, but she kind of wants him to be more than he is, and that is really what today's stories are about, is that longing and that things that we don't say that are all bubbling up underneath. Our next story, which is coming your way in just a couple of minutes, is a lovely lead-in to actually next week's episode, which is going to be all about women making choices in their lives about having children and all of those wonderful choices that women have. And this woman is in a place and a time and a culture where she feels like she's never been given a choice, and everything in it just keeps pushing her down, pushing her down, pushing her down. But she keeps bubbling up, maybe in healthy ways, maybe in unhealthy ways, but you see her asserting herself as an actor in this situation throughout the story, and who she's communicating with and what she's saying and when she is and isn't being heard and by whom she is and isn't being heard is wonderfully written in this story. And so it plays again on that silent communication, nonverbal communication, what is said and all the things we don't say. And both of these stories play with language, the quizzical lizard, and you'll hear in the next story all of the words around reproduction that start with O, and the volume of how we say something, whether we shout it or whether we whisper it, makes such a huge difference. When you're dealing with the short fiction format that we do here, every word is so meaningful that it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, and it's also what you don't say. So I'm going to leave you with this story because I want you to sit with it, because I'm coming back in episode 99 with a whole episode on women's voices around these issues of choice and when you get listened to and how important it is for women to own themselves in this culture. So that is coming in 2 weeks. I have one quick announcement before I get you to your next story, and that is that we are still looking to hear about writers who have influenced you. I would love to hear that for episode 100. So if there's a writer who's had an impact in your life, any writer, any impact, the book that you read that changed your life, the short story that you read that you can't remember anything about it except the last line, or even just send me an author's name. Some of you have been doing that and sending me down wonderful rabbit holes where I can find new writers I don't know about, which is awesome. If you have any of that, noextrawords@gmail.com. Or all of our social media is on noextrawords.wordpress.com. You can also find us over there. I've been really enjoying doing the Instagram holiday book of the day, which ends tomorrow with Epiphany, when even I have to admit that Christmas is over. So coming up next, Death of a Small Civilization by Brittany Bronson, read for you by the author. And I'll be back in 2 weeks where we'll really push the boundaries of women and choice. Enjoy the remainder of your holidays and your transition into January. I will talk to you guys very soon.
Death of a Small Civilization. Last month, my husband stood in the pulpit explaining why God hates divorce, and here I am 3 weeks later, divorcing my husband, and God hates it. After Tony announces our separation, I wait at the exit for the congregation to come. All of them. The men, the women, the teenagers with headphones, then lagging behind, the grandmothers with tissues folded into their Bibles. They line up to grab my hands and my elbow, to let me know how much God hates divorce by saying, "But Laura, God hates it." I repeat, I know, and let toddlers roll over my ankles and tug on my pant legs as their young mothers hold my other hand and my other elbow. Our senior pastor holds his hand on my side so his thumb rests against the bottom curve of my right breast. He whispers, "Laura, please consider how much God hates divorce," which makes me think, this sounds like it should be in italics. And I just keep thinking that as he speaks, because he has one of those voices, it carries a slight slant. So I ask him, somewhat desperately, "Can you please come over tonight and speak to me in italics?" Several attendees overhear, and the crowd leaves together, mutually horrified. It was the one good thing I did today. Unify them. In the car, Tony receives texts that claim I asked a man for an affair in the presence of the church body. He has already replayed every horror story from seminary about Christian leaders who get divorced. Immediate resignations, entire congregations sent into spiritual malaise. Our failed marriage will end his evangelical career, and he is only an assistant pastor, has barely had the opportunity to nurture his own church. Who will be left for him to shepherd? Episcopalians? A slightly more progressive, out-of-state Presbyterian flock? Is it true, he asks me? I offer him the theological term, false interpretation. He does not appear comforted. This is the capital T truth. I don't want an affair. All I want are italics, for someone to come over and turn all these hates into soft letters that I can lean into, to give me some gently inclined words to die upon. Lately, I've been screaming my emotions as I feel them. Anger! Frustration! So when we get home, I open the refrigerator and scream, depression! At the eggs. I fry 3 of them in the saucepan. We eat lunch unequally yolked. Tony observes me like I'm someone else's child throwing a public tantrum. The image is blurry to me, slightly erased, because we don't have children, which are a heritage from the Lord, offspring, a reward from Him. With my diagnosis, the doctor is encouraging an oophorectomy. Because I'm young, still lighthearted, I like to describe it as a poof-phorectomy, because I imagine waking up from surgery and seeing all our non-existent future children going poof into the big man's auric vacuum in the sky. At first, Tony mused on miracles, saying in the shower, God provides, God provides. Then he insisted on technology, that opportunities would become available. They're making robots now, he once said, and I pictured twin infant robots, what it might feel like to nurture them with my breast milk, only to empty it out later through the removable lower back hatches as a kind of mandatory maintenance procedure. My counselor calls these grief hallucinations. This is not exactly a medical term. She is an older woman from our church who has no training but is married to a deacon. A retired middle school English teacher, she has me construct word bubble maps of my feelings before I attempt to express them. At our last meeting, I wrote robots at the top of the page, drew a cloud around spring cleaning, and added an arrow through infertility. She scrutinized it. With your condition, are you still ovulating? She asked. At that, my laugh popped all those bubbles like a manically pumped BB gun. Because why must reproduction have so many O's, so many melodramatic, round vowels to linger upon? Occasionally, I said. Tony says the tumors are benign. I tell her that's not far from being. She concluded infertility is not a good reason to end a marriage. Is unhappiness? I never asked her. Is loneliness? I stepped outside to ask the nearest bush. And I think of that conversation at dinner when dissatisfaction accelerates out of me like projectile vomit onto Tony's dinner salad. He kneels by my chair and prays for me, but I keep my eyes open, visualize our 2 babies grown up into elaborate erector sets that win basketball games and earn master's degrees in psychology. Do you know why God hates divorce? Tony asks. He waits for me, pleads for the biblical answer. God designed marriage to be forever, to reflect his infinite being, because if you shoot an arrow into space and it hits a wall, there must be something beyond the wall. But what if you shoot a gun, I want to ask him, or a rubber band? Or what if, as in my case, instead of shooting, you just bloat aimlessly amidst the galaxies like some puffed-up, gassy slob until you, light years behind the more efficient tools of metaphorical testing, hit that same wall and realize, fuck, the arrow was right. This is infinity, and you kind of bobble over it like some half-deflated helium balloon, then just keep slogging along between the stars, permanently. At this, I reach out and serve potatoes to our little marquee module. What are you doing? Tony asks. I tell him, feeding our family. Tony watches the spuds trundle along the table, then returns hesitantly to his chair, but there is no need because our babies sit in the other chairs, and being made entirely of metal, bear no severe risk of being squashed. My husband spends the rest of the evening in his office making calls to concerned elders. Behind the door, I hear him designing a theologically sound escape strategy. I have now given him a justifiable out. There are only fields of compassion for a man with a delusional wife. I scan the book my counselor gave me about broken Christian marriages. It claims each divorce is the death of a small civilization. So I tour our tiny kingdom, performing quiet burials. By the time Tony emerges, our couch cushions are turned around, tags out. Every other book spine reads upside down. The salt shaker lives in the microwave. And our true saviors, the children, are torn down into strips of metal and laid to rest amidst the silverware. These little massacres in our landscape are only visible to me because Tony's eyes are blurred and draining water as he whispers, "I want out." Marriage, its great cosmic expansion, shoots past our shoulders and hits the ceiling with a poof.
Thanks for listening to the No Extra Words podcast. For more information about today's stories and contributors, or to learn how to submit your own work, please visit us at noextrawords.wordpress.com. If you would like to support the show, please tell a few friends about us, or you can visit patreon.com/noextrawords to pledge your financial support. See you next time.